Sophie Refskou, and I am recording from Denmark, where by now lockdown has almost ceased. There are people in the streets again, people in the parks and in the shops, and I think for some at least, fear and anxiety have begun to loosen their grip a little, although of course fear comes back at unexpected moments and in unexpected guises. So for instance, I think that there may now be an increasing fear that things are actually not going to change that much. This new normality that we were told to look forward to is in fact probably going to look rather too much like the old normality. And I think that the sonnet I want to look at here from Tabish Khair's extraordinary new collection of Quarantined Sonnets captures some of that fear. It's the final sonnet in the collection. It stands out. Well, all the sonnets are striking in their own ways. They all stand out, as it were. But this final sonnet introduces a new mood, I feel. In it, the poet begins in a hesitantly hopeful tone, but then the final couplet turns irrevocably melancholic. So listen. Tired of people, for proper life we prayed. And then suddenly it happened. Quiet fell upon earth. We saw pollution fade, and hardly any human was in sight. At first we hesitated, and then the trees filled with birds, the public squares with bird songs. We occupied the parks. In Japanese cities, the cicadae promenaded in throngs, and prides of lions settled on Kenyan roads, and seals on docks, and whales swam close to shore, and towns belonged to hares and bears and goats. But now this too has passed into our law. As chimneys spew poison as in the past, I tell my pups, it was too good to last. Tabish has drawn on Shakespeare's sonnet 66, tired with all these for restful death I cry. And like so many of the sonnets in Tabish's collection, the links to Shakespeare are subtle and complex rather than explicit, I think. Sonnet 66 is rather deeply despairing. In it, the Shakespearean poet lists a catalogue of 11 wrongs in the world. 10 of his lines begin with an and. So it really does read like a list. Before, in the couplet, he creates a slight turn by saying that he would welcome the respite from these wrongs that death would provide, except that were he to die, he would have to leave his beloved behind. Tabish inverts this pattern by listing first a series of changes in our COVID-stricken world, which from the speaking persona's point of view, at least, is actually a cause for hope. And by the way, the persona that Tabish assumes in this sonnet, if we can call it a persona, is also quite unusual, because as we gradually realize, he is speaking from the perspective of an animal, from a dog. This is a device he also used in the beautiful short story, River of No Return, that he wrote for the recently published Decameron 2020 project by Eri De Luca. There is quite a strong affinity between the sonnet and the short story, both in their narrative and the tone, and they share the same melancholic twist at the end. In the short story, we are invited to share the emotions of a pack of dogs as they cautiously reclaim their eerily empty environment. But in the end, and I'm sorry if this is a spoiler, but knowing humans, it really shouldn't come as a great surprise. The two-legged race returns and resumes our endless process of destruction. If we look at the two sonnets, and I'm very much resisting referring to Shakespeare's sonnet as the original, by the way, because of course both sonnets are equally original, we'll see that Tabish adopts and modifies Shakespeare's opening line. In his sonnet, it becomes tired of people, for proper life we prayed. And he also borrows 3 of Shakespeare's line opening ands and prides of lions settled on Kenyan roads, and seals on docks, and whales swam close to shore, and towns belong to hares and bears and goats. So we get that sense of a list or a catalogue again. However, I feel that there is also another less explicit Shakespearean connection here, which in fact isn't limited to just this final sonnet of Tabish's, but perhaps applies to the whole collection. The final four of Shakespeare's listed worldly wrongs in Sonnet 66 read like so. And art made tongue-tied by authority, and folly doctor-like controlling skill, and simple truth miscalled simplicity, and captive good attending captain ill. What I strongly feel that Tabish has achieved in this collection is exposing equivalent wrongs in our historical moment. But thankfully, he has also demonstrated that art need not be tongue-tied if the artist is courageous enough.